Can you hear me? All right. Hey, family. Welcome. So glad to see you all here this evening. If I haven't met you before, my name is Barbara Fiske. My husband and I have been attending Onramps here for several years, and we live just down the street in the Lowell neighborhood with our 2 adult children. I'm an elder here. I'm the volunteer lead for pastoral care. I'm also a life coach, spiritual director, and a director of a mental health education nonprofit called Clear Thinking Solutions. And I'm really glad to be here tonight. I love to share about how God has created us to heal. And that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight. So this is week 2 of our Tuesday focus series titled Created for Community. So last Tuesday, Pastor Phil shared the biblical basis for community. Does anybody remember anything that struck you that you remembered of Phil sharing last week? Nobody was here. I was online. Yeah? That's right. The roses and thorns. That's right. Yeah, he started us off by with this activity, this tool we could use called Roses and Thorns, where we share a rose, something good that we're grateful about, and then a thorn that was something that was harder for us, something we might want, prayer for. And so I thought that was really cool. We all went around. I mean, I didn't. I was at home online watching. Um, oh, actually, I did. I typed it in. And yeah, now that I remember, it was July 5th, and I was exhausted. And I think most everybody was exhausted because it was July 5th, the day after 4th of July. And so, yeah, so I was grateful to be able to rest. And he also shared about another activity, a tool that we could use similarly, but he said we could use it in the evening, at the end of the day. Does anybody remember? Yeah, it was like a reflection called the examine. And so the idea is at the end of the day to pause and reflect on your day and like talk with God about how He was part of your day and how you felt through the day. And so I really appreciated that he shared those two activities. One that kind of builds community where we could hear from one another, and the other one where that we could have a relationship with God, but also with ourselves, right? Reflect on what happened with ourselves during the day. And so I'd like to continue that sharing and interaction that we had last week coming through this week. I'm going to summarize a little bit about what Phil talked about because I really appreciated how he laid the basis, the biblical basis for this idea of creating a community. He used 2 words that were new to me. I don't know if they were new to you. They were like seminary type words. You guys remember what they were? Ontology was one. Yeah, I love putting you on the spot. I really do personally. I don't do well when people ask those kind of like fill in the blank questions. No, it was missiology, ontology, and missiology. And if I get this right, I'm going to try to summarize what these things meant. Ontology is a study of one's being, and in this context, we're studying about God's being, and he referred to Genesis 1:26, where it says the message says God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, make them reflecting our nature." And so he pointed out that God was referring to himself as our, so plural, and in the sense of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so also I want to just pause here for a little bit. And during this time, I'm going to be referring to God with male pronouns. If you prefer feminine pronouns or non-gendered, please do that familiar switch that you probably do in your mind as I share. Oftentimes people, because God is more than just male, right? So I just wanted to make that space for folks. And so, but I'll be using the male pronouns. So when God speaks of himself as plural, in his own image, he refers to creating us in his image or their image. And Phil laid out that means because God is relational amongst himself, we are relational beings also. He said community is deeply embedded in our humanity because of this. And he also shared how creation that God has created is relational too. So the sky, the ground, the plants, all of the animals in us, we all live together in this symbiotic, sustainable relationship. Not as harmonious as it can be, but it's very much we all depend on each other. And God is so amazing as a creator. So we have, if you've seen the latest photos on Twitter about the galaxies, have you guys seen this? Have you seen these pictures, right? I wish I could state. It's a particular telescope, right? So yesterday was the teaser photo. And what was amazing apparently about this picture that we could see outer space, it's the clearest we've been able to see outer space ever with this photograph yesterday. And it looked like, if you just looked at it, if you're me, who's not educated in these things, it looked like a bunch of pretty colors, like dots. But every dot was a galaxy. So there's like 100 dots in this picture frame. And we know each dot is a galaxy, and each galaxy is filled with stars, just like our galaxy is. So that was a really big thing that happened yesterday. And then today there was more pictures, I think, released. But even on the micro level, even in the micro level, God, the way he created us. So I like to teach about the brain. And so if you think about the brain, the organ is called the brain. But within the brain are all these different parts. And these different parts are very unique. And we know they can do different things. But they interrelate with the other parts of the brain. Like they can't operate on their own. They have to operate with the other parts of the brain. They're not able to be separate and still be good. And that's the way our entire body is, right? We have organs that cannot operate on their own. They rely on the other organs. And not only that, but down to the cellular level, our cells communicate with each other. They cannot operate on their own. There's not a part of us that operates on its own. And not only that, but we need to breathe. So we can only go a few minutes without breathing. We need oxygen brought into our body. Now we can go several days without food, but we can't go very long without water. So God has created us in this very relational, dependent way. It's just amazing to me. So he's created us to be relational beings. Something else that Phil shared was that he referred to the story of Noah and the ark, and how God had told Noah to bring in his whole family and pairs of animals and such into the ark. And so what I'd like to focus on tonight is, starting with that story, is not just the pairs and the family coming in, but that God communicated with Noah first so that Noah could care for others. And so, because the theme of this series is created in community. And so what does it mean that we are created in God's image to be relational, and that we're good, and that, yeah, and that God communicates with us. So can we take a moment, and if you guys could just pause and think about stories in the Bible, relationships in the Bible that come to mind where God speaks to somebody for the benefit of the community. So, any stories come to mind? Any? Oh yeah. So think about different examples of stories in the Bible and Scripture where God communicates with somebody, and that communication with that one person is going to benefit the community at large. Absolutely. Moses, Abraham. Oh yeah, Deborah. So that's great, Grandpa Dave. All of the prophetic community, all of the prophets. Yeah, it is. It's incredibly dynamic. So that the Spirit spoke to individuals, to the prophets, to communicate to the community. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's such good things being said right now. So, Eric, you want to give a mic?
I was just going to add that, like, on the one hand, Paul says, I want you all to be able to prophesy, right? So it's like, it's kind of, yeah, we are. And when we think about the prophets, not just being like, I'm going to, look into the future and tell you the future, but more about like, I'm going to tell you the truth about what you're looking at right now. And I'm going to be a voice for God's justice and God's righteousness. Then yeah, we are all prophets. Like, that's kind of the idea, that we become the voice of justice and of righteousness, that we become the ones who become sort of God's truth tellers. So, yeah.
That's really good. And so, I'm going to summarize what you said, Grandpa Dave, too, that the Spirit was with the prophets who communicated. And in the New Testament, that has been given to the church community as a whole, and so to benefit each other. And going on to the next word that Phil shared with missiology, if I got him correctly, in this context, it refers to the mission of the relationship. So the mission of the relationship of God is guided by love. So God's relationship, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, his relationship with his creation that created in his own image, is guided by love. And so, so God is love. God guides relationship within the Trinity. I'm going to repeat myself a lot, and so I have a reason for repeating myself a lot too, but I'll get there. So that love guides the relationship between God and us. Love is to guide the relationship we have with ourselves, with others, and creation. All right? So God is relational. He's relational with us. This relationship is guided by love, God's unconditional love. We have not been created to be alone. Therefore, our individual walk with God is a journey of reconciling with others. It's something that Phil touched on last week. We are to love ourselves. We are created to be in relationship guided by love. We are in a relationship with ourselves. This relationship is to be guided by love. Love. All right? So it's to be guided with love, not what we call tough love, not judgment, not guilt, not shame.
I hit the button again. Sorry.
You see, these other ways are the ways of the world. They're not of God. All right. So the belief system of using tough love, in the sense of withholding love, of judgment, guilt, and shame. These are the ways of the world, of a belief system separate from a God who is relationally guided by love. Because we are created in God's image, we are to love ourselves. So what does this mean? So for some of you, this idea of self-love is a no-brainer. You're like, hello, okay, got it. Like, all right, Barbara, you've said this 1,000 times. But for many of us, especially for us women who have been raised in the evangelical Christian church in our country, we may have learned a screwed up concept of self-love. Honestly, it's not that old in church history. It's really, I'm going to say, contemporary. And I got to tell you, I don't have a seminary degree, so you just toss all this out. But this cultural spin of who we are as women has been a bit warped in if you think of it in the purity culture sense. And so I won't go deeply into that, but it's skewed in a way that it's communicated to women that they are not all good. And I've been a part of that culture, and I've been a part of communicating of growing up in it, and also communicating to the younger girls. And it's usually in female settings where we communicate something is dangerous about us. Our words should not be. Maybe we shouldn't lead. Things that I don't hear communicated. But the reason I'm saying that, pointing that out, is it's important to understand maybe some background you may come from, presuppositions you may have. So not just us women have heard these kind of things. For men, as well as the larger community, we may have heard teaching that says that we are to die to ourselves. And some of that teaching may have been communicated in a way that means that we are not to trust ourselves, that we are not good, and that we are not to focus on ourselves. And so therefore, you could see how self-love may be a hard thing to reach for or to go for. And so I bring that up because as a life coach and as a spiritual director, that honestly is one of the first things that is brought up. Like, people we don't know how to love ourselves, and honestly, for most of us, probably for all of humanity, it takes some time to understand how to do that. But it's a little more difficult if you come from a church culture that has really kind of put that kind of idea down. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I wanted to put that out there because that can be a stumbling block for understanding a bit more about what it means to love yourself and how God is in this relationship with us for healing and how that will benefit our community in healing. So it's important first to remember whose image we are created in and how we were created, and it is how it's guided. It's guided in love. Any questions about that? Yes.
Okay, is that there's like a fine line between self-love and tough love, and I know that you said that tough love is of the world and it's not of the Bible. So I need some more understanding, because one of the things we talked about last Tuesday was when a person that you maybe in your life or had in your life, and they were maybe abusive, maybe mentally, or they don't respect you in a way, so you distance yourself from them. How do you do that and still use godly love and not end up with the worldly tough love or whatever you want to title it?
Yeah, I was so. Did you bring that up last week?
Yeah.
So I was sitting in my living room and I was so excited that you brought. I mean, not excited is not the word. So when Phil was going into that, when he was talking about this idea of love, I'll jump to this part of my notes real quick and I'll go back to what I was about to say. So he said, he was discussing this idea of when we choose to withdraw, when he says, hold on, let me see. Okay, yes. When he said, and I agree with him, I agree with Pastor Phil when he said this, when we choose to withdraw love from a relationship over and over again, we are not allowing love to guide us. And he gave an example that someone may say, I don't hate them, I just won't mess with them. Noting that people will have their reasons to withdraw love from someone. And I remember, like, I totally understood the tension that that would raise. I mean, that makes complete sense to me. And so, but I also understood what he was saying. So, Phil, and he went on to say something else, which was a little bit hard to hear. Marcia, did you want to say something? Okay, he said something else that may have been hard to hear after that. What he said about that that if we draw love from a relationship over and over again, we are not allowing love to guide us. So he said that he brought this up not to bring guilt or shame to anyone, and I agree. In fact, please do not embrace guilt or shame if you're in this kind of relational situation, and please don't. I'm not suggesting that anybody should feel any guilt or shame either. All of us have been or will find ourselves in such a predicament in one time or another in this kind of situation. So I have more to say about this. So let me just share. So while we are protecting ourselves by making this choice to withdraw our love from someone, we are missing out on something because we are withholding love from them. The act of withholding love is harmful to ourselves, but it's also very protective of ourselves. We are protecting ourselves, right? So Phil went on to encourage us to consider even move towards a future where we can learn to love them by not withdrawing our love from them. And he said this is what reconciliation looks like. And again, this would be kind of hard to hear if you just heard it in a moment. So I'm hoping I can repeat what Phil said afterwards, and it will be easier to hear. So he said, it can take years and years for reconciliation to come to fruition in these situations. And he said it may not come until like your last moments. And I would say it may not come while you're alive. But moving towards the reconciliation with the goal to be guided by love is about, again, starting with your relationship with God and self-love. What does that look like for you? All right? So if we could take a moment, just take a moment and sit up straight. Maybe look up because, roll your head and your neck. So, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Allison, thank you so much for clarifying. So I am not suggesting that reconciliation means that you physically go and do something nice for them or let them back into your physical life. No, I actually am not. There is something, though, that happens when we've been hurt by somebody else, and we will protect ourselves and withdraw our love from them. So what I'm suggesting is that is the healing that we need to seek, is how do we recognize that we have done that and heal us, whether or not we reconcile with that other person I'm going to say is up to God. Because this is part of my story. Like, I have had people in my life I have withheld love from. I have withheld love from people who have abused me, people who have betrayed me, people who have betrayed those I care for. My healing journey has been self-work. I have been working through questions such as, why did the abuse cause me to feel so alone? How do I stop feeling alone? How do I stop being the victim Meaning, how do I stop being on the defensive? How did I lose hope after the betrayal? Where do I see hope? Why did I leave when I failed to protect those in my care? How do I return and trust that I can care for others again? Now, this has been a lifelong journey for me. And my healing has occurred in community. And I want to clarify, we're not talking about a friendship spat here. We're both tired and we've said grumpy things to each other and we're tired of that, right? We're not talking about that. This conversation, I think, is deep hurt, deep trust broken, betrayal, harm. So I want to suggest that our healing with our relationship with God, guided in love, is the work that happens in us in that healing. So that we do not, because our mind and our body will protect us from wanting to get hurt again like that in the future. And we will put up walls and we will isolate ourselves. And we will have a low tolerance for certain things because we do not want to get hurt again. So if we will have a low tolerance for certain things, certain ways people interact with us, because if it's close to the way we were treated by the person that hurt us, then it makes sense that our mind and our body says we cannot be around this person. This is not something we could do on our own. This is the healing that happens as we work through this. And God is so gracious too. It's not a light switch. It's a journey. It is a journey of being with other people, of learning to trust other people again, being in community. For myself, it's been seeing counselors, being with spiritual directors, living in community, being with people that I trust, that I have, that do life in a way that I could do life with and grow. It means that I could live, play, and worship with others, and that heals my heart and my body. It means I'm with people that I can cry, lament, hold on to, and that brings healing to my mind and my body. I have friends that can hold my secrets. I have trusted, wise people that I can turn to. Like I said, I get counseling and spiritual direction. I wrestle with myself, and I ask God to show me how He sees me. And so that's the amazing gift of this healing, this relationship guided by love that God offers to us. What are your guys' thoughts about that?
Yes, it's on. Okay. I think, I know with Lindsay and I know Allison was asking the same thing, but when you're hurt by someone and it's, the first thing you want to do is try to forgive this person, in order to, and that's a process. And it's not so much that I'm withholding love, but I'm, like you said, I'm being cautious and I'm protecting myself, especially if this person is not willing to change, because, you don't withhold love or back off until somebody continually does something. And I know myself, I'll give you chance after chance, but if you continue to purposely want to hurt me or, whatever it is, then I withdraw. I'll be cordial, I'll speak to you, but I'm not going to allow you to hurt me anymore. So I don't know that that's withdrawing my love for them, because I love your soul. I don't like what you do per se, but so does that mean that I'm withholding my love from them because I'm now withdrawn and protected, and I'll be cordial and I'll be loving, but I'm not going to let you in my circle.
Yeah, exactly. Mama Marcia said she's going to be guarded. Can you take the mic?
Yeah, just really quick. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what you mean when you say withholding your love.
That's a great question, right? So what does it mean to be withholding our love? And so I think people are aware when we withhold love. So with that, there's context too. So if I There's no one, I could just easily say right now, just because of the space I'm in, and maybe I'm not doing enough life with you all, there's nobody at Onramps that I have like a big issue with, all right? But if I did, and I started to withhold my love, I mean, because I'm human, and you could
What
read.
does that look like?
Okay, thank
what
you.
does that mean? Like, give
So-
us, what withhold my love, what does that look like?
So Lindsay, I think for me it would be, I'm gonna just, so there's it's so hard. So there's people in the community outside of Onramps that that I withhold my love from. I mean, I cannot be in the room easily with certain somebodies, and people that hurt me while I was growing up, I could probably not easily be in the room with. And so, so in that sense, it was very protective. Like I could not pretend to like you, or it might look like I was pretending, right? Or I would avoid you, or I would not do things with you. And that would affect, especially if I'm in leadership, that would affect then what maybe you got to if you were the person, you know. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's so good. That's so good. Well, let's. So I love what you're saying so far, Allison. The idea of boundaries, and so okay. So in this context, it is okay. So in community that is striving to do life together, having certain boundaries, like there's. I mean, none of this is like easily put into a box. There's not some easy rules because we're people, we're humans, and in fact, because of that, it's messy. But we could, you guys, we could handle this. All right. Right. Exactly. So let's talk about me. So I have issues with scheduling and time. And if scheduling and time are high values for you, like you feel loved when people are early, you may not feel so loved by me. I'm going to try, especially if I know that you do not feel loved if I'm late. You feel taken advantage of, taken for granted, blah, blah, blah. Sorry for saying blah, 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 if that's your value. But I am going to get on your nerves. And unless, even if I communicate to you that it has nothing to do with how much I value you, love you, care you, how much of our relationship is a high priority to me, if my action of being late is going to frustrate you, for your sake, we're probably not going to do a lot of things together, right? Because I'm going to get on your nerves. And because of your past experience, you're not going to believe that I'm earnest. Oh, absolutely. So what can you do with me? So somebody like me, now honestly, I can be reliable on time ahead, plan the event, set things up. But maybe for me, you do what some of my closest friends do when we're doing an event together. You send me a text like, hey, can I pick you up in a half hour? Knowing that I might have been distracted. And so it's not I caught you again for forgetting, but because I'm in a relationship with Barbara and we're partnering together, I'm sending you texts a half hour before I pick you up, right? Or maybe if I say I'm going to do something and if we're in a relationship and that's not the easiest thing for me to do, say, hey, Barb, why are you signing up for something that's not the easiest thing for you to do? But that's what I'm trying to get at is we work on it together. If I keep on promising things and I can't do it, then if I'm not seeing my mistake in community, hopefully if we're in a relationship, you say, this is why I can't trust you. So let's not put that on your plate. But it's messy. Yeah.
Allison made a good point. To me, withholding love is if I have a problem with you, I have a problem with you. Okay, but I'm going to be cordial. If I withholding love to me looks like if I see you like that Samaritan that's in need and I walk right by you like I don't see you, that's withholding love. Because even though I don't want you in my circle anymore because you've done something to me, if I see you in need, I'm not going to walk by you because that's showing God's love. So that's
Yeah, I want to add to that because I've had a situation, before I'll wipe it after I'm finished. I got a mask on too. Okay, so yeah, this is a subject for me because I've had a situation in my life where I was abused at church before, abused, gifted, used, abused. They never wanted who I was because I was one of those persons that had a mind of my own. I would not, just go with the bandwagon. I wasn't one of those people, but very gifted. So they wanted the gift, but not me, but continued to do things that would cause me to kind of distance myself. Still wanted to be used of God, but the circle that I was in, which is very toxic. And so some of the behaviors and patterns continued. And so self-love for me was removing my presence. Because I'm not going to let you continue to do me dirty, to run my name to the ground, when I know for a fact what's really going on. And so, but even after one of those situations, it was, well, how do you feel about this group of people, this person now? I said, I still love them from a distance, but should they ever need anything, call me. I don't wish any ill will upon anybody. Should I drive down the freeway and they're on the side of the road with a flat tire and nobody's there, I will pull over. Even though you've done me the worst, I would always, help. So I'm not withdrawing my love, but you're not going to know Lindsay anymore. There's no more of that because you've done certain things too many times. And because I've been told you have a lot of patience. Well, it ran out. Like you just get tired of being done a certain way and everyone acts like you're just supposed to go ahead and take it. I'm not anymore. So.
Yeah, I would. Oh, sorry.
I've been in the same situations, but I'm thinking if Jesus was here and he was preaching, right? I think first of all, there's only so much love that you can show from a distance. But I remember the scripture of how he says that we're called to forgive 70 times 70. And so when I hear people saying, oh, well, I just won't mess with them or I won't talk to them, you cut them off.
So, yeah, no, I think that I really appreciate what you just said. What's your name again? Tyler? Tyler? So, Tyler, you and I are different. One of our differences is you're a man and I'm a woman. I have a friend in the neighborhood, call him Richard, who says, why do people call the police, like, on somebody messing with their backyard? And I'll just take a cup of coffee, go out and talk to this person messing with the backyard. Richard's at least as tall as you. Looks like he's been around. Difference between me and Richard is he's a man, feeling pretty confident in his strength and his power in the moment. He's going to go and interact with that person breaking into the backyard. And so I'm just saying that just as an example of we're complicated, and the power dynamics of the folks that we engage with are part of this too. So as somebody who I do not trust in the community outside of Onramps, because God is who he is and because of where I am in my journey, this person is around in my life. I will not go meet with them alone, but I would bring community with me to meet with them. So does that make sense? You know, like, I am not going to vilify this person anymore. Like, only a few people know who I'm talking about, because God has put this person in my community, in life. And so, and God is, as I am growing up in God, he's giving me a different perspective to this person. This person has, I don't want this person to know how much they affect me. But I have boundaries and I protect myself. But I bring community in because of the power dynamic. Real quick, I also want to clarify, I don't know if it's clarify. Okay. Show of hands, who has had church hurt in the background? All right, so for those online, about half or just over half of the people in the room said they've been hurt in church in the past. I would suggest, and I have not done a scientific survey of this, I would suggest that Onramps attracts people who have been hurt in the past. Marcia, can you repeat that again into the mic?
When Onramps, at the beginning of Onramps, it was just, a handful of us. But that was one of the things that, Reese and I, we would jokingly, it really wasn't a joke because that's where we were. And we would say, war. We are rejects. It's a group of people, we're rejects. And a lot of us came from church hurt, churches that we were, grew up in the church, serving, loving, and were just hurt by leaders and folks in the church. So we would say that all the time. War. We are rejects.
Yeah. Anybody else?
When we used to go to city, they would tell us as females, don't go to your car by yourself. We would always leave class in like 2 or 3, but we never seen the guys do that. They would just take off. But they were like, if you're by yourself, make sure you get another female to walk. Make sure you either try to some way park together or park in the same area so that you're leaving together. And because 2 of you can do more than one being attacked by somebody. So that's what I was saying about the difference of, like you were saying, we're different by whatever the situation, and also because we're different humans. So we're going to approach it differently. But even though we should still be coming to the love, but the situations are not going to be the same.
Absolutely. And it's complicated, right? So between you and I, we're both women, but I'm white. I mean, I'm biracial, but I'm white passing. And so there's situations that I will be more confident in because I know how I'm going to be treated in that, or at least I'm going to leverage that, right? But as a lone woman, I may not, like, there was a situation where I thought somebody broke into a neighbor's house. My neighbor's a woman, and she wasn't answering her phone. And another neighbor walked by, and I was like, she only spoke Spanish. And so using Google Translate, I was trying to communicate what I thought was going on. So she's like, yes, I'll be here with you. So I called the police. And so fortunately, there was nobody at the house. But she saw that I needed her. Like 2 of us felt strong enough to be, like, at least banging on the door to see if somebody was there.
There we go. I just wanted to throw something in there too that I was like,
as we're seeing the conversation go, I was like, oh, I'll toss this in. But I think a lot of it maybe has to do with like, we're saying like not cutting off love of this other person, right? And I think how we understand what love means too could be a big part of that, because if we think love has to mean like I have to stay in physical proximity to you or like something, to me, so I'll just throw in like how I see it, right? Like to me, I feel like love is to like will the flourishing of another person, right? It doesn't have to be, it's not my job to make sure that person is flourishing per se, but like, or just like they're good, to will their good, you know? And so for me, how I've experienced it, I feel like God doesn't want me to cut off the part of myself that says like, I want good for you, even if it's at a distance, even though I know like, oh, you might hurt me and so I can't be close to you, but like the point at which I'm like, well, I want bad things to happen to you, or like I would love to see that or something like that, you know? And I think that, you know, that is like a thing that's like internal to me, but I think it also leaves me open to how God could prompt me in the future to like reach out in a way where I felt like it was safe and I felt like God was calling me to do it. Like I could try to cross that boundary out of love, maybe, if I felt like it was. But I think at the point that I say, I'm totally done, like in the sense that like I don't care about your well-being anymore, I feel like I'm doing something to my own soul in that sense, you know? That's to me what it means to say like cutting off love, or like kind of, it really hurts me more than the other person, because like they probably don't care. But what I'm doing to myself is I'm not allowing myself to be open to how God might lead me to do something that would kind of push my comfort level. But I mean, obviously I'm not going to say God isn't necessarily going to lead you into a place where you're going to get like harmed again, because I don't think that's what God wants from us. Am I making sense? Like how we define love, it doesn't have to be like I'm physically doing something for somebody, but if they're dead to me in my heart, like I've killed somebody in my heart, you know? And for me, I don't want to do that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and to trust that, to finish that off, to trust that God will prompt us to love the other person too. We don't have to create this like artificial action of loving them. Like, you know, like we can wait on God to prepare a time for that.
Yeah, to kind of like, you know, reiterate what you're saying, Eric, but also I guess I'm curious about it. Because that we can be in proximity to a person and performing all sorts of acts towards them without willing their flourishing, right? So like you can't look at an action that a person is doing and say, that person is loving, right? You can't do that, like, because you don't really know what that relationship entails. At the same time, there can be a kind of like Slacktivist approach to loving. I will your flourishing, and then like I've done my duty as a Christian just by sort of I've somehow like, oh, I fulfilled my entire duty to my neighbor by exuding good feeling towards them, right? So there is like action is necessary, but what that action looks like is not prescribed, right? So like I could be in a relationship with a person that is abusive and so distance myself from them and still continue to perform acts of love towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. Good examples of those are, for example, like let's say parents, honestly, that you don't want to cut off the relationship with. I have no judgment for somebody who's not cutting off a relationship with an abusive parent. You know, like let's say like emotional or verbally abusive, especially, or with your boss at work, supervisors at work, right? Like you've set up boundaries, you do your job, you do the best you can, but you're protective, and so.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I'm kind of piggybacking off of Dan. You know, the scripture says, "Owe no man nothing but to love him." So I owe you love, but it looks different how I love you as compared to someone else. You know, just like when as a young mother, my, I don't know, some kind of discussion we had about which one is your favorite child, you know, or which one do you love the most, or whatever the question was. And it's like, you know what? I have 2 boys and a girl, and I love them all, but I have to treat them differently according to their personality. So I'm going to love you. Hello? Okay. I forgot what I was.
So because they're different people, you're going to love them differently. Yeah, absolutely. So what I'd like to invite us to consider here at Onramps, oh, Grandpa Dave, is to, well, let me let Grandpa Dave share first.
Yeah, just real short. I hope I'm going to try to be not my gift. I think I know for me the love was always tied to in my understanding of it as growing up and things like that. I just had this. I think I was sort of bathed in the cultural concept that love has something to do with my feelings, and that it was I had to somehow get a feeling of love for somebody. I had to have this feeling, and feeling had to drive it. Had to be all that stuff. And I was thinking, I had a really hard time reading the Bible about Jesus as the model of love, because he. Okay, he loved everybody all the time, but my Lord, he was hardcore when it came. People he was in conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right, absolutely. Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Jesus wasn't all warm, fuzzy feelings. In fact, yeah, and so, but coming from a household where love was withheld, like emotional love was withheld, I need all the feelings. Like I appreciate people showing me I receive love that way, and I try to give it out that way too. And it's interesting too, like because Jesus had this relationship with God himself, right? He sometimes did things that disciples probably thought, like, where are you going? Jesus went alone. He went away to be alone, to rest. And if I was a disciple, I'd be like, I mean, because this is actually the first, when I first looked at this in college, I was doing leadership in a college Bible study. I remember thinking, why does Jesus get to go? Like, he gets to go and rest. I didn't see it as him modeling it, right? And so, yep, he did. Absolutely. And Jesus understood what it meant when your friends let you down. Like, they did not stay awake with them in the garden. And then, yeah, John, exactly. He was betrayed. He felt alone. He was, when he was arrested, he was away from those who cared for him. So what I'd like to do, wrapping this up, is charge us as a community here at Onramps. So we've been all over the map, and I really appreciate you going with me all over the place. I appreciate it too because this is not simple. We are invited into a relationship with God, a loving relationship with God, and that is guided by love, that is not easily defined. And we are invited and created to be in relationship with each other, guided in love, and it's not easy to figure out. But of all the places that we could figure that out, and I can't think of a better place to do that than here at Onramps, in this community. We do not have all the answers. We are learning boundaries. Like some of us have clear boundaries and some of us have no boundaries. So in community, we're learning these things together. I'm learning about myself by being in relationship with you all. And that is good. And there may be a time where I set boundaries up with somebody that later I don't need them for later. And that is good. So this idea of something I want to end on is if we look at Romans 12, that is a passage that has been referred to as the idea of dying to yourself and following God's ways. But if you consider what God's ways are, that God's ways are of love, loving yourself as part of the creation, this relational part, and loving each other. I hope that gives us some tools to moving on. So let me read Romans 12, the first two verses, and I'm going to read it from the Message because I like the Message. So this is what it says. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you could do for him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. And so as we continue to do life together in this community of healing community, I want to encourage us to do this messy work and do it together and not do it alone. Any last thoughts before I close this in prayer?
A lot of that self-love is working within you, trauma, things that you have to work on to be that better person for somebody else. And to always pray and ask God to help me be a better person, help me trust a man and being healthy because of that next person hurt me so that it's hard to trust the next person, and it's not fair to that person. But it's inside of me embedded that I have to ask and pray for help and get help from counseling, from teachers, from whoever God puts in my way to love. I want what's best for you, not to do what's best for you.
I almost want to say amen. Amen. Right. Well, with that, yeah, amen. Go in peace, in love, trusting God is healing you in love, and that will benefit us as we work together to heal in love. All right. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for the great conversation. And I just want to say I really appreciate how we can be a community that can like work through these things together in conversation, which is why we try to have a lot of different people lead, like because we're not just waiting to hear like the magisterial like answer from, right? We're wrestling with what does it mean to be a community together. So thank you for being part of that process. See you soon. Not sure yet.